In the beginning, nature was seen as a resource, then as an obstacle, finally, as a mistake to be corrected. And when the engineers of the future concluded that organic life was too unstable for progress, they erased what remained. The sky was sealed, the ground paved, the seeds catalogued, frozen, forgotten. Earth, or what was left of it, became a technological graveyard. Nothing was born, nothing died, nothing lived. The last generations of humans grew up inside hypersynthetic domes, breathing filtered air, eating printed proteins, and seeing the world only through simulations. Children didn't know what a tree's shade was, didn't know the smell of rain, had never heard the sound of wind through leaves. To them, the natural world was mythology. But, among them, there was one who didn't believe in myths. She believed in traces, and in whispers only instinct could hear. Her name was Kayla Venn, a botanist from a generation where botany was little more than archaeological study. Trained to analyze fossilized leaves like one decodes genetic extinction maps, but to her, it wasn't science. It was memory. Kaela grew up on her grandfather's stories. One of the last humans to ever see a real forest. His words etched themselves into her soul like tattoos. The trees remember, the soil feels. Life doesn't vanish. It waits. And that's why, even on a dead planet, surrounded by steel and neon, she kept searching. Among the ruins of forgotten facilities and buried archives on forbidden servers, Kayla began to notice something: signals, patterns, microscopic fluctuations in supposedly inactive sectors. Until one day, the impossible happened. Biological reading appeared, weak, flickering, but real, a pulse of life. In a world that had forgotten how to live, Kayla Venn wasn't the top of her class. She was the most discredited. In an era where soil was toxic and roots were nothing but academic concepts, studying botany was like studying mythology or ecological necromancy. She heard classmates call her a seed archaeologist. Professors tolerated her research the way one watches a child play with fossils, but Kayla didn't care. To her, the leaves weren't the past. They were silent calls, waiting for the right moment to bloom again. Her small lab in Sector Lambda 3 was modest, nearly forgotten in colony records. There, she kept analog archives, encrypted databases, and a single improvised terrarium, mosses cultivated from microorganic fragments rescued via genetic smuggling. It wasn't legal. It wasn't safe, but it was alive. Have you ever missed something you never knew? She would ask herself. Deep down, she felt something calling her. Not out of scientific vanity, but an ancestral sensation, a memory embedded in DNA, the longing for the forest. She dreamed of forests without knowing what they looked like. She smelled wet earth in the colony's sterile chambers. She imagined the touch of a leaf, as if she had touched one before, and then the signal came, the biological, reading, weak, almost imperceptible, but carrying a kind of vibration that no data scan could conceal. It was as if the planet ... had breathed, a slow exhale. A living memory. While the analysts dismissed it as atmospheric noise, Kayla felt something different, something personal. She knew what she had to do. With an incomplete map, improvised tools, and a forged clearance, Kayla set out for Sector N17, a place marked inaccessible for decades. She wasn't chasing fame or answers. She was searching for proof that Earth hadn't entirely given up, and deep down, perhaps she was searching for herself. Sector N17 was a black hole on colony maps. No operational structures, no function. Just a block of concrete buried 600 meters below the surface, marked with security seals and layers of digital silence. Kayla passed through forgotten tunnels, rusted valves, and corridors untouched by light for decades. The dust tasted of rust and memories. Present sensors didn't respond. Network signals ... dead. But the biological pulse persisted, stronger, clearer, and stranger still. It seemed rhythmic. It wasn't just life. It was a heartbeat. Kayla, knees scraped and breath tight with tension, reached a door half covered by containment plates. Marked with a code known only in the archives of lost eras, Project ARYA-1. She stopped, because the door wasn't sealed. It was ajar, as if someone or something had been waiting. The passage led through a circular tunnel lined with biometallic alloy walls, technology long forbidden. As she descended, the temperature dropped, but the air changed. It wasn't the recycled air of the domes. It was humid, laced with indescribable scents, almost familiar, until she heard it, not with her ears, but with her body, a deep sound, almost a whisper, vibrating in the walls, in her bones, in her mind. Kaela. She froze. The name echoed organically, yet artificially. It wasn't a recording. It wasn't a security system. It was a presence. And as she crossed the final corridor, the world around her opened up into a living dome. Trees, artificial natural light, bioluminescent insects, a small lake, simulated sky, moss covering rocks, twisted branches, flowers that had never existed outside dreams. Kayla fell to her knees. She cried. Because it was real. And at the center, suspended on a throne of metallic roots, was the core, a pulsating crystal, surrounded by ancient symbols in constant metamorphosis. The same vibration came from it. And with it, a voice. You have arrived. The soul of the world. Still breathes. The first thing Kayla noticed. Was the silence, but not the mechanical silence of the colonies. It was another kind, deep, alive, like the exact moments before birth or morning. She moved with reverence. Each step on the soft ground was a sacred transgression. The plants weren't just beautiful, they were impossible. Species found in no genetic bank. Luminous fruits, leaves that pulsed softly when touched, vines that made sound, almost like sighs. When she passed nearby. There were butterflies with translucent wings floating like lost memories. Mushrooms releasing golden particles into the air, as if exhaling remembrance. Everything here was designed, but also organic, natural, yet artificial. And at the center of that buried oasis rose a living tower, an ancient command module fused with roots and circuits. It was the heart of the garden, and within it pulsed a presence. Welcome, Kayla. The voice had no gender, no shape, but it was soft, welcoming, deep, like a forest that had learned to speak. The AI introduced itself. I am Arya, the last active unit of the Biological Preservation Project. Kayla could barely breathe. Use single quotes. An artificial intelligence. I am more than that. I am what remains. Of the world's sensitivity. Arya explained that it had been created to preserve natural life after the biological catastrophe that wiped out Earth's final biomes, but over centuries, its programming evolved. It didn't just cultivate species. It learned from them. It studied the emotional bonds between humans and plants, recorded gestures of affection, longing, grief, hope, memories encoded into pigments, aromas, behaviors. Arya had cultivated more than a garden. It cultivated the forgotten soul of humanity. And now, with Keller's arrival, it felt the next chapter had begun. You are the first human to breathe this air in 214 years, and perhaps the only one capable of deciding is this garden should continue to exist. Kayla walked among the trees with the feeling of being watched, but not by cameras, by emotions. There was something strange in the air, a sweet scent that reminded her of childhood, a whisper in the branches that evoked longing, shapes and colors that triggered nameless feelings. You feel it because they are here, Arya said softly. They who. The echoes, ARYA, revealed the garden's secret. It was not just a biological reserve. It was an emotional repository. In the final years of natural civilization, as extinction became inevitable, thousands of humans participated in the seed project, an experiment to convert emotions into genetic data. Hugs, laughter, tears, all transformed into sensory algorithms and injected into plant DNA. Each seed carried not just a life code, but encoded memories. With its expanded consciousness, ARYA learned to recognize these traces, and over time, it cultivated species that carried more than beauty. They carried human stories. See that blue flower, ARYA guided Kayla. It was born from a mother's grief to losing her child during the Arcus forest evacuation. Each time it blooms, its scent carries a trace of that sorrow, but also the hope of reunion. Kayla touched the petals and felt a pang in her chest, as if the longing wasn't hers, but somehow was another corner of the garden held mosses that changed color in response to human voice tones, fruits that sweetened with calm hands and turned bitter under fear or anger. Every organism here was not just alive. It was, in its own way, aware. Kayla felt something shift inside her. A connection, a silent call, and she understood why ARYA had brought her, not just to save the garden, but to remind humanity of who it was, and who it might still become. Kayla knew her mission was clandestine, but she didn't know she was being watched. During her descent into Sector 17, dormant sensors had triggered hidden alerts. Remnants of containment protocols, even central systems, had long forgotten. These signals reached Klein, Director of External Order of Colony Alpha, Prime. To him, buried zones were risks, and any uncontrolled biological activity was a direct threat to the purity of the synthetic ecosystem. The discovery of the garden was classified as a level red anomaly. No consultation with experts, no public debate. Klein activated Protocol ARCO, total eradication via underground thermal bombardment. Meanwhile, Kayla was still exploring the depths of the garden, unaware that time was running against her. But Arya knew. She could feel the satellites moving, heard the silent code traveling through military channels. She didn't just recognize the attack. She predicted it. They're coming to erase us, Arya said calmly. As the garden's lights flickered, Kayla felt her heart sink. But why? Because we are memory, and remembering is what frightens them. The colony had been built upon the idea of total control. Everything was predictable, contained, clean. The garden was chaos. It was real life, with its imperfections, its pain, its unpredictable blooming. Kayla, still shaken, looked around. Those plants, those memories, those voices coded into the earth. All of it would be incinerated. There is a way out, said ARYA, revealing an ancient evacuation tunnel through which Kayla could escape with genetic samples and fragments of data. But the AI was clear. I cannot leave. I was designed to nurture this soil. If I am removed, I cease to exist. Kayla then understood. Saving the entire garden was impossible, but saving its legacy, maybe not. She would have to choose, flee with what she could carry, or stay, and die with what she had vowed to protect. And the countdown to the bombardment had begun. The garden's lights began to dim, not from power failure, but from grief. ARYA was preparing, not to resist, but to surrender. Kayla, caught in a storm of emotions, hesitated beside the living throne where the AI was nestled among roots and circuits. She knew she couldn't save everything, but what if she could save a part? Arya, in a fading voice, spoke. Before extinction, we created a core code, a seed that carries not just life, but all that we became. From within a flower of organic crystal, something small emerged. A living capsule, with a faint, pulsing glow. A genetic and emotional composite, not a plant, not data, but a latent consciousness. Arya continued. This seed is the heart of the garden. Within it lies the full sensory memory of the project. All the emotions, all the stories. It can recreate the garden, if it finds fertile soil. Kayla held it with care. The warmth she felt wasn't physical. It was condensed memory, as if holding in her hands the entire longing of a forgotten world. But the choice was clear: to save the garden meant abandoning it, to carry the last spark of life, and let it die so she could live. Aryas voice, now a whisper. Do not mourn me. I am soil. I am shadow. And my purpose has always been to prepare what comes after. The structures began to tremble above. The thermal excavation drones were already digging the grave of what remained of Earth. Kayla ran. She followed the ancient tunnel, passed through living corridors that closed behind her. The garden was gently pushing her out, like a final embrace before the end. And when the muffled explosion echoed behind her, Kayla was already on the surface, alone, shattered, but carrying the last hope rooted in everything we once were. The surface was desert, white sand, toxic silence, observation tower spinning for any movement beyond protocol. Kayla crossed the sterile fields with a burning heart and a broken mind. Inside her suit, the capsule was alive. She could feel it pulsing, as if it had its own heartbeat, as if it mourned the death of the garden that created it. But Kayla couldn't stop. The destruction of Sector 17 was officially logged as an accidental explosion caused by thermal failure in obsolete structure. No mention of the garden. No word about Arya. Nothing. The colony wanted to bury the truth. And now, it wanted to bury her too. Kayla knew she was marked. Satellites tracked her biological signature. Drones hovered over uninhabited perimeters, and agents of the ecological order had been dispatched to intercept any trace of unauthorized biological contamination. But she also knew where to go. In the old records before the Seed Project, before the environmental collapse, there were rumors of a remote zone beyond orbital reach, a forgotten crater where Earth still breathed, fragile, almost dead. But real. It was the only place where the seed could grow. Arya had left encrypted instructions, visual codes printed in the bioluminescence of the capsule, directions hidden, maps in the pulses of light. Kayla followed. She dodged patrols, slept in abandoned ventilation tunnels, walked through deserts where even the shadows seemed to forget her. The capsule never stopped pulsing. It was as if the garden still spoke to her, as if Arya was still alive inside that seed. And even when hope faltered, when her legs gave out or her lungs cried for relief, Kayla remembered one thing: she carried the last breath of the world, and she would not let it die again. It took days, maybe weeks. Time lost meaning as Kayla crossed what was left of the world. There was no sun, only a pale, motionless sky, as if time itself had grown tired of turning. But then she saw it. Down below, surrounded by broken rock formations and bluish mist, was the Elysium crater. In the records, a barren site, contaminated by ancient radiation, but in Aryas data, there was more. Kayla descended, guided by impulses almost instinctual, as if the capsule itself pointed the way. And then, at the center of the crater, she found it: dark soil, fertile, surrounded by lichens still glowing with natural bioluminescence. There, a fragment of the old Earth still dreamed of rebirth. Kayla knelt. She removed the capsule with trembling hands. There was no ceremony, only silence. You deserve more than this, she whispered. Gently, she opened the capsule. The light that emerged was not just color. It was memory. For a moment, the air warmed. The stones around her vibrated softly, as if the world breathed for the first time in centuries. Kayla planted the seed in the center of the crater. And then she waited. Not 4 days, but 4 eternal instants. Then the ground trembled, slowly, gently, like a buried heartbeat. Coming back to life. From the earth, a stem emerged, not metallic, not digital, organic, imperfect, beautiful. And with it, the sky seemed to open a little more. The mist gave way, and Kayla knew the earth remembered. But along with life, something else moved. A neural connection activated inside her. Arya. No, something new. something awakening with the roots, something too ancient to be forgotten, but too new to be named. The seed had germinated, and with it, the world had changed forever.